Okay. I think there's 4 weeks left, if I'm right. I don't know. It seems like this weekend's the 17th, 24th, 30th, or 1st, 31st. And then we have one more week in May. So that would make this week 12. We have 2 more subjects to cover this semester. One is called organizational structure. That's today's lesson. If you have your book, you should open it to chapter 8. Chapter 8 is on page 87, chapter 8. Then the last topic is called the employment cycle, and it's about finding employees and hiring them and being able to manage them. So yes, that's what that's about. So let's get into organizational structures. I'm on page 87. So there are different ways that a company can organize themselves, and it's dependent a bit on, of course, what kind of business they are, what kind of service they're providing their customers. Some companies rely very strongly on quality control, and they mass produce. So in order to do mass production and to be able to manage that quality control, you have to have a very strong system and a strong structure. And some businesses rely on customized service, specialized service for individual customers. So that kind of business would have a different structure. You need less control. You need to have more feedback from your customers. So it really depends on what you're trying to do in terms of the structure that you're going to have. I'll just get through this first paragraph very quickly. Organizational structures can enable the business to successfully meet its mission and goals. An innovative business owner will structure the business so that employees are encouraged to work together creatively. That's innovation. The management structure is as flattened as possible to hopefully allow and enable idea generation, timely reporting, and control mechanisms. That's what I was talking about before. Control. They're utilized, and successful teamwork approach is possible. Businesses can set up simple structures and procedures in order to ensure it has the best opportunity to meet its goals. I think I have to do this on the board. I think this is a real, one of the rare things that needs to be done really carefully on the board. So I'm going to raise this thing for a minute. So, okay, we have, first of all, we have 3 levels of management, right? 3 levels. We call it the top, the middle, and sometimes they're called the frontline management. So the top levels are the CEOs. The CEO is an employee. A lot of people don't realize that. The CEO is an officer. They're not the owner of the company. They're hired. The middle managers, okay, so they're usually parts of departments. And then line managers, they usually would probably do something like the factory or the manufacturing. And your manufacturers. they're managing the employees who are doing the actual work in the company. So we have these 3 levels, right? And then the levels, they are sending information. So we have communication. That's one of the issues we have to deal with. And communication is in 2 different levels, 2 different directions. We have some verbs we use. Delegate. You delegate responsibility, or you direct downwards. Information comes, communicates the tasks that need to be done. And then we get reports from the lower level management, and this management has to report back to the higher management. So we get to basically, this is all done through KPIs and short-term, long-term goals. So delegation of responsibility. So delegate what? Responsibility. And then we have report accountability. So to take account. So we delegate responsibility down, and then employees and managers and the middle managers report back to the top. So communication can be fast, or it can be slow. It can be direct, or it can be indirect. So some companies, you really need to have fast communication. You need to know exactly what's happening and be able to serve the customer right at the moment. Some you don't need. So we can imagine in some companies like KFC, for example. So if we look at KFC as a company that comes from the US, and they have their CEO is in some state in the US, and they have managers in the US, and then they have managers that are international, and they go all the way down to the people that serve you your chicken or service employees here. The people that you meet when you go, there's probably 8 or 10 levels of communication between the CEO or the person that you meet in Vietnam. So there's very little communication and accountability that goes from that level all the way to the top. There doesn't really need to be in terms of what the CEO needs to know about what's happening in Vietnam. There's many middle managers. So, another issue, I wish I could get rid of this. Get rid of it. Another issue with management structures is what level of customer feedback do you need? So, do you need to know what's happening with your customers? What level of quality control do you need to manage? Like consistent quality control. So something like KFC is going to be very controlled, right? You need the chicken to be the exact same in Vietnam that it is in every other country. Maybe some small differences, but pretty much the same. The customer expects to go into any KFC in the world. They see the same logo, same chicken, same recipe, secret recipe. They expect everything to be the same. So control is very important throughout this whole system. So these are factors that you need to consider. Quality control, customer feedback, what level of communication that you're going to have. So then we have structures. We have what are called the connections between the different levels here. So there's different levels of the organization, and this is called the chain of command. It's like an army. So chain of command. So we go down the levels in the organization. And each level within, we'll look at an organizational chart, they have some level of employees below them. So for example, let me get the terminology down here. So if this was 6 employees here and 1 manager is managing them, this would be called the span of control. How much control does each manager have? So we have this one, which is the chain of command, and this one, which is the span of control. Chain of command goes up and down, how many connections or how many steps between each employee and the management, and the span of control is how many staff under 1 manager. So those are the basic terminology. The other one is this one. And these terms refer to decision making. Who is making decisions? So we can imagine a situation where we don't really want each employee at KFC to be deciding, what your meal should look like, or the managers on that level changing the menu. We don't want them to make decisions. We want the product to be very clear, and we want the staff to do the job the same way, same friendly way, no change, right? We don't want very much decision making in that big mass market, right? How much customer feedback do we need? How much quality control? At KFC we need a lot. Customer feedback, we don't need much, right? In a mass market product, we need more quality control too. So in a mass market product, we don't really have much customized decision making that needs to be done by the staff. So decision making is important when we have customized products, or when customers have a lot of their service involved. So we have more interest in what the customer's feedback is going to show us. We're going to learn from customers' feedback. So sometimes I want to give power. So decision making is about power, and let's say, for example, I have, what would be a good situation to give power? So let's say that that you're a travel agent and you have the flexibility to help me to solve the problem of, well, you have choice, right? So every time I ask you a question, you can say, let me talk to my boss. And then you go to your boss and you come back and you can't make any decisions for yourself. I would feel very annoyed with that situation. I would say, why don't I just talk to your boss? I don't really need you if you're not going to be able to make decisions or help me to make decisions. So some jobs, I really need the staff to be able to help me and make decisions. If I have a problem, if I'm in a restaurant and there's a mistake on the menu, I want the service person to be able to immediately handle that problem, to be able to come up with some decisive action that's going to help the customer, not lose a customer for the future. I don't want them to have to go to the manager and ask for help all the time. I want to empower. That's called empowerment. So if we talk about power, it's the power of decision making. So employee empowerment. How much power should I give for the decision making of my employees? Sure, they're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you would hope that you would train them well enough that they'd be able to make good decisions. So how much power am I going to give them? That's a question of centralization. So if something is centralized, then all decisions are coming from the top. If it's decentralized, I'll let some of the decisions go through the different levels of the chain of command. So Centralized means only pretty much top management makes decisions. It's very strong. It's a strong kind of central decision-making kind of Hitler-style kind of story. So I'll start with that. Let me just go through levels as it is in the book so we can see another version of levels. An organizational chart illustrates the structure of a business organization and the relationship between the different people and different roles in the business. The level of each individual or group on an organizational chart indicates their importance relative to each other. Groups on the same level are considered to be on equal importance in the organizational hierarchy and in terms of decision making. Generally, most organizations classify their organizational charts into three main groups. Page 88. The three main levels of an organization are the top level management. This usually includes the board of directors and the CEO and the basic vision of the company. The middle managers usually consist of supervisors, department heads, and the frontline managers are the ones who are responsible for production typically. They work on the product, perhaps on an assembly line, or directly with customers such as sales staff, so they're manufacturing or service employees. So this actually relates very directly to the functions of management, which we don't really talk about enough. Let me point this out. So we're always, we have these handy acronyms, right? Acronyms for everything to help us remember. An acronym is, in this case, PULL. PULL. These are the functions of management. P stands for, I'll put it this way, P stands for planning. O stands for organizing. L stands for leading, and C stands for controlling. And controlling also could be called monitoring, which is like when a doctor checks on a patient. So basically, organizing, what we're particularly organizing here, I should make it clear, is resources. What we're leading is we're motivating people, so organizing resources. So PLLC, planning, organizing resources, leading, and controlling or monitoring. So if we want to apply these POLC to the organization, lots of planning at the top, right? Long-term planning, vision of the company. Planning is in the top level of management. Does the top level do a lot of organizing? They don't really do a lot of actual organizing. They don't allocate resources to different places. They arrange the funds, the money. They're like the producer of a film. They get the resources together, but they don't really do a lot of organizing. They do a lot of leading. Their vision of the company, their mission statement, the business plan, that's all there to support the staff all the way down to the bottom and have them believe in what the company is doing. Controlling and monitoring, they don't really do it. They just use the information from the controlling and monitoring. The middle managers, they are the ones who are organizing the resources. They're the ones who have to figure out how to make the vision of the top leaders. So if you put vision at the top, and then these people are to realize the vision. They need to figure out where to put the resources. These resources include human resources, money resources, company resources, infrastructure, trucks, all of that stuff. So a lot of organization in that level. Middle managers, we don't really expect them to be, leading us in the front of the army or in the back. They're basically administrative figures, and they may have some small leadership qualities, but for the most part, they're there to organize and then to monitor or control what's happening at the lowest levels and report back, report up to the top level. And that's all, again, it's managed through KPIs. KPIs are goals set with numbers. The line managers, they're trying to get the productivity of their troop, of their staff here, to increase it, to get them to be as efficient as possible. So they definitely have some leading in there, and there's quite a bit of controlling in there as well. So they're not really responsible. The resources come to them. They're not really organizing the resources. They're just using them in the way that they've been given. And then they report back. They give information about how productive or efficient, and this information goes back up. The leadership is to get the numbers to go up. This control also goes up, and then the plans are remade. I'll put productivity. So realize vision, and productivity is here. So different functions of the business have different levels of the hierarchy or the chain of command. So the top managers are here, middle, and line managers. So management fits into the organizational structure. In large business organizations, on page 88, in a large business organization, human resources, or the HR management, has equal importance with a number of other departments. In a traditional hierarchical structure, it will be on the same level as other areas. For example, in the following diagram. So here we have, if you look at page 88, we have the board of directors on the top, and the top management. We have the middle managers, which are the department heads, and also the human resource manager. And then we have some line workers. We have 3 levels in this chart. Organizational charts illustrate the reason why we use them is we want to understand these factors, this accountability. Accountability means who do you report to? Who are you supposed to give your information to? If someone comes and asks you and says, okay, how's it going? Or who do you file your reports to? Accountability. Distribution of or delegation of responsibility going down, and of course the communication, coordination between the positions. So coordination is communication. So we have the communication, which can be, done in many different ways, meetings, emails, middle management, but the question is how to communicate. So, so those are, I think, the only thing. I'm not going to get into the different kinds of structures yet. I just want to introduce the ideas of organizational structures. Maybe I'll finish page 89. Every business, no matter its size, must consider how it is designed to enable efficient communication and achievement. As businesses grow and become more complex, their organizational structures must change. So some structures work well for small businesses, but they won't work for bigger companies. like KFC, for example. Design features to consider include the chain of command, the span of control, responsibility, accountability, and delegation. Delegation and responsibility are very similar. Chain of command, that's on the board. It's in the circle under CEO. Chain of command is how the hierarchy of the business is set up so each person has authority, so that's about power relationships, authority over other people, and who they're responsible for in a specific section of the business organization. In the larger organizations, the chain of command will move from the CEO down to general managers, supervisors, and then frontline employees. So the chain of command is, let me make a note about the chain of command. The chain of command is not how many levels there are, it's how many connections there are between levels. So for example, if you look at page 88, at the bottom of page 88, where we had our first example, if someone asked you how many levels are there in the chain of command, maybe some people would look at it and say 4, but actually there are 3. There's the lines between the boxes. That's the chain. The chain is the connections between the levels, not the levels themselves. So if you have 8 levels, that means you have a chain of command of 7. That means 7 different people need to talk to each other before the communication can get to the top of the hierarchy or top of the organization. Span of control. So that's this one on the bottom, the span of control. In this case, if you use the same chart on page 88, you would say that the HR manager has a span of control of 3 people under them. So from our book on page 89, the span of control is the number of employees who work directly for a manager. In traditional organizations, this number is generally quite low. So we need to have some management of, close management of, when we have high quality control needs, we have to have managers manage their staff very closely, so they can't make, these employees don't get much decision-making power, so we have less employees under one manager. So in a more controlled, bigger business, we'll have more managers. So in traditional organization, the number of people, this is the span of control, under a manager is quite low. So a manager or a supervisor might have a span of control over approximately 10 employees. More recently, with the introduction of information technology and also with the freedom given to some workers, the manager's span of control could be up to 100 employees. So they could be managed from one. Right now I'm working for a school and we're all teaching our classes on Zoom. And in order to do that, you know, they just send us a schedule. There's maybe 100 teachers. We all have our classes. Very few managers and very little feedback between us. So these kinds of organizations are sometimes called flattened, meaning that there are not many levels. It's a flatter structure, but we'll talk about that next time. Making the notion of span of control less relevant to their analysis. Now, each person in that group of 100 is given a lot of power, usually, to make decisions. If they needed managers to make decisions, then they would have more managers, so they could call them. So usually the decisions are left to the staff. More complex organizational charts reflect this change away from traditional hierarchies. Hierarchy means system of levels. Traditional organizational charts are based on showing the hierarchy of an organization. Hierarchy, levels, system of levels. This illustrates responsibilities and lines of communication. Each person in an organization is usually given a particular amount of power, which is called authority. This is the formal power associated with the position. You are president, so you have the presidential powers. Authority is not usually related to the person, rather connected to the position in the chart. This person is also given a certain level of accountability and is responsible for ensuring that specific tasks are done and to report them back to the top. Modern business structures tend to rely on delegation, to delegate, the verb to give responsibility, delegation to achieve business goals. Effective delegation occurs when a manager or supervisor is able to assign authority to an employee who becomes responsible for the decision-making of that particular job or position. The accountability for the work still remains with the manager. The manager has responsibility, so they have to know how much power or how much decision-making power they can give to their employees. Some of it, though, has been shifted to a different level of the organizational chart hierarchy. Successful delegation helps to grow the skills of the staff and to build a stronger staff. So for this class, I just want you guys to be able to know the terminology, so when we get to the next class, we'll be able to talk about it in detail. I will show you one quick video on span of control.
Hi there. When we're looking at organisational structure, we'll come across a term called span of control. So what does it mean? Well, the span of control is all about a number. The number of employees for whom a manager is responsible or in control of at any one time. So it's all about the number. And here's a little worked example, just to show you what we mean by the number, span of control. Let's imagine let's say it's a sales manager in an organisation, and the sales manager has 4 people there.
It's one of those weird classes where you probably have to take some notes. So all those definitions, I'm going to give you homework so you can follow those definitions. You'll probably watch this the following week anyway. I believe in you. There you are.
When we're looking at organisational structure, we'll come across a term called span of control. So what does it mean? Well, the span of control is all about a number. The number of employees for whom a manager is responsible or in control of at any one time. So it's all about the number. And here's a little worked example, just to show you what we mean by the number, span of control. Let's imagine we've got a manager here. Let's say it's a sales manager in an organisation, and the sales manager has 4 people working for her. Her span of control is therefore 4. 4 employees, subordinates as they're known, report to and are controlled by the sales manager. The span of control is 4. That's a pretty manageable group to look after. But what happens if the span of control increases? Let's say we started with 4, but we're adding in maybe 3 more sales agents. Now the sales manager's span of control is 7. Yeah, we can all add them up. 7 sales agents reporting to, controlled by the sales manager. So that is a wider span of control because 7 is higher than 4. But of course you might have situations in some organisations, in some businesses, when the span of control gets even wider. Maybe it's 13 sales agents, or even worse, 26 sales agents, amazingly even wearing the same colour clothes. So wide spans of control are perfectly possible. Are they desirable? Are they effective? Well, of course it depends. And therefore it's important to think about what determines the span of control in terms of working out what's the right or the optimal span of control. Factors such as these on the screen there, the nature of the work involved, how much supervision is required by the manager for the subordinates. If lots of supervision is required, that argues the case for a narrow span of control, i.e. a low number. To what extent is the organisational business wanting to allow employees to have some autonomy over their work, over decision making? And a nice link there back to Hatton and Oldham's model of job design, who argued that autonomy was one of the factors that helped improve job satisfaction. Well, if an organisation wants to grant more autonomy to employees, that might argue for wider spans of control. And also, how many layers does the organisational business want in the organisational structure? The number of layers in the structure is known as the hierarchy, and over recent years, decades indeed, we're seeing organisations typically move towards flatter structures through delayering in particular, and that has encouraged wider spans of control.
Again, they're contrasting what they're calling traditional structures, which means many levels, these big companies, big factory systems, which still exist in pretty much any country that does manufacturing. So they're talking about Western companies and service companies. When we have service companies, you can have a flatter system. You don't have to have as many managers in between the staff. We can even think about services like GrabBike. I don't know how many managers, I don't even know if they have any managers for all these GrabBike drivers. It's a very flat system. There might be one or two people to talk to for every 100 drivers. That's a very flat system. Whereas a system that is traditional would have many levels of, like the school here. I think a good homework project would be, I'm going to assign this to you, is to imagine our school. Make an organizational chart of our school and try to imagine how the structure works. Now, our school is a little bit complicated. We have two different structures. We have the administrative structure and we have the academic structure, which comes from Australia. So we probably have a very interesting structure compared to most places.
Layers are taken out of the hierarchy. Is there an optimum span of control? Well, it used to be said that it was 6. Of course, there's absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever these days. The answer is, it depends. As we've mentioned, a narrow span of control can be particularly suitable where employees need close supervision, or where the organisation wants more layers in the hierarchy. And of course, it may help improve communication if you've only got 4 or 5 subordinates as reporting to you, if you're working as a manager. Not easy to communicate with if you've got 20 or 30. But on the other hand, of course, you can make the case for wide spans of control. Not the least being that it means you need fewer managers and therefore reducing costs. But also, if you want to give employees more autonomy over their working lives.
Autonomy means power, by the way.
So the answer is there is no right answer. Narrow or wide, it all depends. Albeit in recent years, we've seen organisations move to wider spans of control as part of broader efforts to reduce HR costs and improve human resource management. There we go. That's just a brief introduction to the concept of the span of control.
So that's enough for today. Then I'm going to apply, this will be an example next class, I'm going to apply these ideas to what is called tall and flat structures. We're going to learn 4 different organizational structures. All right, have a great day.